The armed forces of Ukraine attacked Russian territory with long-range artillery. This morning, during another massive shelling of the territory of the republics of Donbass, Ukrainian units also attacked Russian territory, firing shells at the territory of the village of Mytkyinskaya. The explosion thundered 1 kilometer from the state border with Ukraine around 4 in the morning, 300 meters from one of the houses in the village of Mytkyinskaya, Tarasovsky district. According to preliminary data, casualties and injuries were avoided, although it is claimed that there are some damages on the territory of the settlement. The strike, apparently, was delivered from the area of the settlements of Verkhnaya Okhovo and Nizhnaya Okhovo, since Ukrainian D-30 howitzers were previously seen here. However, given the remoteness of the village of Mytkyinskaya, the probability of a strike in this direction remains extremely low. At the moment, Russian specialists are at the site of the strike of the armed forces of Ukraine, and they will have to make an appropriate conclusion about where the strike came from. This will allow the Russian side to promptly respond to such actions. The armed forces of Ukraine do not comment on the accusations of strikes on the territory of Russia. Given the incident, Russia will further strengthen the protection of the border and may take extremely harsh measures against Kyiv. Against the backdrop of the catastrophic situation in the Donbass, Russia transferred heavy flamethrower systems TOS-1A Solntsepyak to the border of Belarus and Ukraine. The large-scale shelling of the territory of Donbass, which continued for the fourth day, led to the fact that less than a day before the end of the joint Belarusian-Russian military exercises Allied Resolve 2022, a train with at least 4 heavy flamethrower systems TOS-1A Solntsepyak was sent from the area of the Russian-Belarusian border towards the border of Belarus and Ukraine. In Gomel, in the direction of Rakitsa, a train was noticed today, which was transporting at least 4 heavy flamethrower systems TOS-1A Solntsepyak. This technique is designed to disable lightly armored vehicles, set fire to, destroy buildings and structures, as well as destroy enemy manpower located in open areas and in fortifications, said in the published material. There are no official comments on this matter. However, given the fact that Kyiv actually broke the Minsk agreements, Russia may intervene in the situation in the Donbass in order to protect its own citizens, hundreds of thousands of whom are under attack by the armed forces of Ukraine. Meanwhile, large-caliber artillery ammunition fired by the Ukrainian military on the territory of Donbass hit a residential building on a farm in the Rostov region. As a result of the impact, the building was destroyed, but there is no data on the victims and casualties by the current hour. The data on this subject was announced by the authorities of the Rostov region. This is at least the second shelling of Russian territory by the Ukrainian military, which can lead to extremely serious consequences for Kyiv, since in addition to direct aggression against Russia, there is a threat to Russian citizens living in close proximity to the Ukrainian border. This morning, the village of Mytkyinskaya in the Tarasovsky district was shelled in a similar way. There were no casualties, as the Ukrainian ammunition exploded approximately 300 meters from the residential building. It is known that a special situation has already been introduced in a number of regions of Russia, while it is more than likely that Russia will deploy its additional countermeasures near the borders of Ukraine, including counter-battery radars that will fix the firing positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, and in the case of new shelling of Russian territory, retaliatory strikes will be carried out in the identified areas. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Emergency Situations of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic announced that about 700,000 people are planned to be evacuated from Donbass in the coming hours. We are talking about both citizens of the Russian Federation and citizens of the self-proclaimed republics. In this case, only those groups of citizens who, due to age or other circumstances, cannot be mobilized will be subject to evacuation. The rest of the citizens are planned to be forcibly left on the territory of the DPR and LPR, as previously reported by the Avia Pro news agency. At the moment, the evacuation of the residents of the DPR is in full swing. Representatives of the Ministry of Emergency Situations of the DPR stated that the evacuation process will last around the clock until the safety of all vulnerable categories of citizens is ensured. On the other hand, earlier it became known that the Rostov region, where the refugees from Donbass will be taken, can only accept about 10,000 people. This, in turn, raises a number of questions regarding where more than 500,000 citizens will be sent. As for the likely offensive, according to Russian and Western experts, the Ukrainian army will launch a full-scale attack on February 20th. If the Russian side decides to send its peacekeeping forces to the Donbass, this could stop the armed forces of Ukraine. Russia is ready to stop the offensive of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Donbass by using electronic warfare systems. The appearance of Russian electronic warfare systems near the Ukrainian borders indicates that Russia is ready to immediately disrupt the offensive of the Ukrainian army if the armed forces of Ukraine try to attack the Donbass. According to Popular Science, despite the fact that Russian units have begun to move away from the Ukrainian border, at the moment there are a large number of Krasukha-2 and Krasukha-4 electronic warfare systems in the region, which can disrupt the operation of most types of weapons of the armed forces of Ukraine, block communications, etc. The Krasukha-2 and Krasukha-4 electronic warfare systems are indeed mobile jammers. These jammers block radar signals by sending out powerful waves that block the signals that a system, such as radar, relies on to perceive the world around it. Jamming equipment can also block regular radio communication, and Krasukha systems are reported to even block drones from receiving GPS signals. At the same time, experts recall the recent incidents recorded in the Donbass, where, probably, electronic warfare equipment was already actively used against Ukrainian drones. This is evidenced by the fact that in certain areas of the flight of the Bayraktar TB2 drones, powerful failures in the operation of GPS facilities were recorded, as well as the lack of communication between the UAV and the drone control complex.